TopMedTalk.
This roundtable discussion is presented by Monty Mythen and Desiree Chappell, with their guest, Brian Woods, anesthesiologist and Vice President at Northstar Anesthesia. There are additional contributions from Professor Sol Aronson, tenured professor at Duke University and Executive Vice Chairman in the Department of Anesthesiology, as well as TopMedTalk listeners and conference delegates. Enjoy.
Great talk. Thank you very much indeed. I want to take you back, which you referred to multiple times today, to the autonomy question. And in that, I want to deal with, enhanced recovery, we know is pathways and then compliance with the pathways. So when people look for the secret sauce, the only thing they seem to conclude is you need greater than 80% compliance with described pathways to move the needle, whereas what the natural energy in any system is you get about 60% compliance. Can you fix that? And can you fix it with threats, money, love? How do you? What's the answer?
Yeah. Anytime there's a challenge to individual autonomy, you've got to have answers. And in our particular model and in our approach, it's all about trying to get the right teammates or the right providers on your team, physicians and CRNAs in our world, that are going to buy into the fact that we're trying to do something other than just remain autonomous. If your autonomy has proof and it has data, then we're supportive of that. But in our culture and in our approach, the goal is more important than the role, which means the bigger picture is more important than you as the individual. And so we try to establish a culture where you recognize that unless it's provable, it's probably not defensible. And if it's not provable and we can prove it that there's a better chance with the compliance to a protocol or other types of things, we put it on them to prove to us why their way needs to be better. But we definitely start with, it's kind of an Air Force thing, but a service before self. We try to minimize the role of individuals without reducing the opportunity for a physician or a CRNA to not have direct input into the decisions and the medical care that they're delivering. It's an extremely difficult thing. And I come back to the prior point. It's all about the data. If you can't measure the data and you can't report individually, and I'll state very transparently, I just had meetings this Monday to take all of that pre-op data that we're talking about and be able to break that down to individual monthly scorecards so we can start measuring people to their individual performance on the quality indicators that we're tracking. And so we talk about it. We're still evolving to get there, but that's how we think we're going to do it.
Can you expand a little bit more on those quality indicators? Is there a sort of minimum data set that you can?
Yeah. There's two parts to our world when it comes to quality and data reporting. The first part of it is primarily built by Rick, wherever he is, Rick Dutton. So we actually follow most of the direct measures with the AQI, the Anesthesia Quality Institute, and we report through our QCDR the same type of data so that we can report and normalize and then also in future years, quantitate against that. The second group of quality indicators we have in our contracts and how we operate our arrangements with our clients, the hospitals and the ASCs, is at every single facility, we have anywhere between 6 and 10 direct quality measures. The difference here is I can't normalize across the entire enterprise, but I can normalize physicians and CRNAs against the local performance at that local level. And so, and for the people that are in the room that work with us, those results, we've not been really good recently at sharing even back to our own people, which is why I'm a big believer in personal primary accountability. I think we're all competitive. We all got into this business to help people. But our competitive nature is if you show me something that I could get better at or that I obviously can do differently, most of us are wired to the point where we're going to do that. And so that's what we're striving to do, is to take those two quality sets of data and give them back to our providers monthly so we can watch their performance.
And the idea that each element that you might comply with has a monetary value. So let's imagine there's a 20-step pathway, and each component of the pathway is worth 5% of your total remuneration. Because, someone comes around to my house to do some work, they cut half the lawn, I'm paying them half. Actually, I'm firing them because I don't want a half-cut lawn. But I'm certainly not paying them for the whole lawn to be cut. And if my taxi driver drops me off halfway there, I'm not paying them for the whole journey. What's wrong with that approach?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach, first of all. To be very direct, we have some incentive metrics and incentive pay for each of our physicians and in our CRNAs in the equation. For everybody that works with me, I don't think that they're at high enough values that they actually change human behavior. Personally, that's just a personal opinion. We have them on theory and we have them in place. But at the end of the day, because we all make such good money and salaries for what we do, the amount that we have at risk or in the game, I think is probably not high enough to actually change real human decision making and what we're doing for compliance. That's something that we all need to talk about and work on. But at the end of the day, this is the broader macro movement. They're trying to make to where payment doesn't happen unless there's proven at least standard value. And then, the whole game with MIPS and MACRA is trying to get into the plus money if you actually can prove that you're performing better than the average standard deviation in the nation. So I'm not sure if I answered your direct question, but philosophically I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. And at Northstar, we know that this has to be part of the equation for how we solve things moving forward. But it's not going to be easy because it is going to be a change from how we all get paid very nicely to do whatever it is we've been doing in any way that we've been doing it.
I'm actually going to make some comments to sort of reiterate and emphasize what I think you said. By the way, you said it much nicer than I can imagine I will. I always say between data or science, as you put it, and change is reality. And so what I've learned from this afternoon's wonderful speakers is reality is a combination of emotion, trust, and easy to do and incentives. And I think that's the reality that we're also invested in figuring out how to move. And it's very, very hard. And I think the theme of all four lectures this afternoon have touched on that eloquently. The other comment that I'd like to add is to Monty's point about paying the guy who's mowing his lawn half when they only mow half the lawn. We're the people with the lawnmowers, and the people who are going to choose to pay us are the people who are going to have expectations for outcomes, particularly in a evolving total cost of care, two-sided risk healthcare environment. And that's where we're moving everybody. So we're the people pushing the lawnmower, and we're the ones who are at jeopardy to not get paid if we don't do a good job.
I think that's right. So I'm a person driven by beliefs, and in your gut, you have to believe that even though there's not answers and it's hard and it's difficult, you've got to believe that if we keep moving in this direction, there's a chance that we have something that's better on the other side. And so I would take that, the unicorn slide and all that kind of stuff, and you kind of live off of that if you're wired humanly. But I would also flip that to the pragmatic. If you keep pushing in this direction and you keep fighting in the game and you keep trying to get the data and you're trying to prove that you're doing the right thing, right? It's courageous to do the right thing even when it's hard. It's also the best way to sustain what you currently know as present income. In anesthesia, the pressures of downward reimbursement are going to continue. Hospitals will want to spend less subsidy. Payers are going to want to pay us less for the units and rates for what we do. That is a truth. And so I would encourage you to think, I hope you're wanting to do all of this for the right reasons and the right feel-good emotions, but I'd also tell you it's probably one of the most pragmatic ways you can try to fight and hold on to the really nice payments that we've all been able to make for the last several decades in our particular field. And so I would encourage you in that. Follow-up comment here?
Of course. One more comment. Your slide, your simple cost and revenue slide, I would ask that we all heed that and add to the cost side something that we, I think, have done a terrible job at doing in healthcare in general, in perioperative medicine in particular, and that is the cost of investment in our future. And I think we need to do that. I think we've been victims of our own success for too long. I think we have been taking advantage of a artificial world, and I think any good corporation, any good business will set aside some money in a skunkworks program, if you will, or just for innovation and research and development. And clearly, obviously, those of us who live in academics, and I know many of us do not, there's also a cost of doing good science. So this will not become easier if we don't, I guess, motivate ourselves to change our behaviors.
I've been doing this role for this company for just past 12 years now. And as of January 1st this year, it is the first time I was given any designation of a budgetary amount to apply towards research and development and push in this particular direction. And so as difficult as it is to work with large private equity firms and all those kind of things, I do want to applaud the one that we're currently with. It's the first time they're willing to make those types of investments for what may not pay off in 2 or 3 years. But if we continue on the journey at year 5 or year 6, we might be at that threshold to where we start to see the returns on what we're trying to accomplish here.
This is a great conversation. Do you have anything else, or do you want to go to Slido?
I want to go back to Sol for 1 second about this is sort of overlaps between what we call academics in the United States of America and the non-academic centres. So do you think there's enough financial awareness in practitioners who work in so-called academic institutions? Not in the National Health Service for the last 10 or 15 years, we've routinely discussed the money, if you see what I mean. So we go to our monthly meetings and we put how much we're spending on drugs up on the wall, and we put our ins and I's and O's, and we see spreadsheets, and we kind of start to understand the money. Does that happen in academics here, or is it just if you choose to do an MBA?
Well, goodness. Complex question. I don't know. I think we're becoming more sensitive to those realities. I think it's becoming more a part of our day-to-day dialogue. I would add, traditionally, it struck me as very interesting, particularly within my colleagues of academic providers, the level of conscious naivete that they almost were comfortable having. And sometimes they would just sort of revel in their lack of knowledge of that. I think that's evolving. I think that's changing. I think the whole litmus test of where we are is being moved by the evolution of value into care. That said, I would add that there's, on the other hand, I thought you were going to ask the question through the other perspective, through another lens, which is within, Duke Anesthesiology, we also have a community division. Some of my colleagues in that division are here with us today. They're private practicing physicians, and they accept it and have provided significant contributions to help, if you will, push the needle in the academic mission. And so I think there's a great need of sensitivity both on the side of the academic to understand what dollars and cents are going to mean to our future. And similarly, I think there is a need of our colleagues in the community and private world to appreciate the importance of pushing the needle from academics. We need each other, and I think we have to understand that better.
So we have just a couple questions we're going to be finishing up here. What resources do your platforms request from you, and what do you provide that is most effective in starting enhanced recovery programs?
So I think, first of all, on the resources, the conversation normally starts with either someone at administration or surgery that already has kind of caught the bug and knows how to have this conversation, and we get invited in to come partner with them. So that's probably one type of request. What do we provide that's most effective? I think it goes to an earlier situation because of our scale, because we've got 30 great leaders in here who invest in time and things like that. When it's time to go to, Owensboro, Kentucky, and go solve what's going on there, we don't have to just hope that those people figure it out all on their own. We get to bring in resources who have been through the fight, been through the journey, have the decks, have the talks, have the protocols as a starting point. Not because we're going to come force exactly what we've done somewhere else on that particular facility, but the resource and the talent that we have to be able to come and kind of self-consult for what's needed in that town. I think it's probably the greatest resource we have based on our scale.
And is there a service line that is typically easier to start the care continuum with? Our ortho surgeons care about turnover times and if they can give Kevsol. So
let me turn that into a positive answer. Because orthopedic surgeons only care about turnover times and what antibiotic they're going to give or not, it's often a good starting point. I didn't give the whole speech, but listen, if you don't know this trick, when you're trying to solve for the culture of multiple different groups, your first question must be, what can I say is in this for them? And if you can't answer that and you just go to the table with what's in it for you or what's in it for your patient, that's beautiful and that's missional and all that stuff. That's not human economics. You can't get something without bringing something to the table for them. And so orthopedics, I do think, are extremely interested in this because, A, it's a lucrative specialty, and the better efficiencies they have, the better money that they make. We can take the stance that that's wrong and they should have better values and they should think and believe like we do. Or you can take that as an opportunity and go make it work for them to get it accomplished. So I'll look here to the guys. Orthopedics it was on the slide, but other service lines that you guys have found have been easier to start up than others?
I wouldn't say easier. I'd say there's a certain standardization within the protocols. You mentioned earlier, start with the principles. So, of course, that's the baseline. And you have to be able to be flexible and nimble and move within different service lines. So they all have a different need. There's multiple variables within each service line, but one harder than the other. In my experience, I really haven't seen that. In fact, recently, surgeons have become, in the last 2 to 3 years, have become more and more interested in this, such that we actually have a partner as we continue to move forward. Right. And some of our very first conversations are not just with the team, the team leadership and the administration, the hospital administrators, but actually the surgeons are now joining us at the table. And 3 to 4 to 5 years ago, we didn't see that as much as we do now. So our partnerships are expanding, and the skids are getting greased as we move forward. But it's still not easy. It still takes a lot of energy and a lot of time.
On that note, there's nothing else to say. Any other comments? Thank you guys so much. Brian, thank you. That was fantastic. Absolutely.
TopMedTalk.
Nick Majerison here. Thank you for listening to TopMedTalk. Now, make sure you've subscribed to TopMedTalk on your podcatcher or however it is that you're listening to us at the moment. And you're spoilt for choice. We're on pretty much every single podcast platform you could think of. So make sure you've subscribed. Make sure you've engaged with us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And make sure you've signed up for our email updates on topmedtalk.com. If you get yourself there, you'll find a website that contains all of the podcasts that we've ever done. And it gives you the chance to sign up for our email updates. That way we can always get in touch with you and tell you what we're up to.